What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. I'm Dave Caban, here for a Monday review episode. I call it the Monday review because I review things on Monday. You listen to it on Tuesday, but we make use of the Monday review tool, and there we are. So we're going to do a couple of things in this episode. The first is we're going to review some of the performances from week 3, give out a couple of awards. Then I want to take a look at a couple of teams and what we have seen from their notable players through the first 3 weeks of the season, and also consider the fact that for some leagues, you're near a quarter done of the regular season this far. Who are the players that are really standing out at this point in time? So before we do that, we will hit a drop, and I will remind you to go to rotoviz.com, subscribe, and use the promo code RVRadio2024 to get 10% off of your annual subscription at checkout. All right, so I have the Monday review tool up. Let's go take a look at quarterbacks here. We can see Dak Prescott put together a performance with 29.9 PPR. I believe that a good chunk of points were scored later in this contest, much to the chagrin of teams opposing Dak Prescott. We also saw Lamar Jackson put up 26 points in that game. Brock Purdy with 25.8. He threw for 3 passing touchdowns. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I think he had a couple of rushes as well. Yeah, he actually went for 292 yards passing. Also put 41 rushing yards on the board. The pleasant surprise of the week was very likely Malik Willis. Now, he threw... Let's take a look at the line here. He produced 25.4 fantasy points, completed 68% of his passes, threw for 202 yards through the air in 1 touchdown. He also recorded... Let's see here. He rushed 6 times for 73 yards and a touchdown in what was a very fun performance, as he got to go into into a game with his former team, the team that drafted him, and put together a very impressive performance. Back to looking through some of the other results. Sam Darnold with another great game for Minnesota. We talked about him some last week. Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, and Bo Nix with his best performance of his young career. Now, he did a lot of damage with his legs in this one, getting to 19.3 PPR. Now, through the air, though, he did complete 25 of 36 for 69.4% completion rate, 216 yards. Of course, 248 air yards, not the highest total on the day, but still, nothing to scoff at from a passing perspective. Not to say that, he lit the league on fire or anything, but a decent line for fantasy purposes. And he also rushed for 47 yards on 9 attempts, adding a rushing touchdown on what was a pretty crucial play when he made it. So you see Denver really laying on to Tampa Bay. I say crucial play, but really they kind of controlled and dominated a large portion of that game. So good for Bo Nix. He's followed by Justin Fields, Caleb Williams. Then you see Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff. Bit of a down week for some of the bigger names. Of course, Jalen Hurts at 10.9, CJ Stroud at just 9.8. I'm recording this on Monday night, so we still have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels to go, and that will shortly shake out some of the final results that we see on the week. But let's take a quick look here at Patrick Mahomes while we're looking at quarterbacks. So if we look at quarterbacks that have played in 3 games at this point, Patrick Mahomes is behind Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers. And then you have Patrick Mahomes, and then you have CJ Stroud. So early on, But Mahomes not putting up the numbers that perhaps some of his managers would have hoped for. And we'll talk a little bit more about Travis Kelce, who got some time on the airwaves during the GLSP review episode that was focused on wide receivers and tight ends last week. One of the things we talked about was how poorly he's been scoring as a fantasy player across recent games. And you know what? Let's just do it right now. Let's go over and we're going to pull up tight ends. In this season, if we look at PPR from top to bottom, it's going to take me a bit to get down to Travis Kelce. I need to go down to tight end at 20 before we get to Travis Kelce, who has just 15 PPR on the season. This puts him behind guys like Noah Fant, like Tyler Conklin, like Chigo Okonkwo. So managers, especially in those FFPC leagues with that tight end premium scoring that really took Kelce early, are going to need to see some improvement from him in the coming weeks. And as we talked about now, it's been a while outside of the playoffs that you've seen a good week for him from a fantasy perspective. But let's get back to running back. At running back, if we look just at week 3, you have Saquon Barkley once again coming out, setting the world on fire. He puts up 33.6 PPR, had 17 rushing attempts for 147 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, also saw 4 targets, caught all 4 of them, as 9 receiving yards. It is very hard right now to make a case against Saquon Barkley being one of the top players drafted if we were drafting redraft leagues again. And we'll zoom out here on running back in just a minute. He was followed by Kyren Williams, notable performance for him for the Rams, picking up a lot of the slack with many of his team's wide receivers out, followed by Derrick Henry, Chuba Hubbard. Let's take a look at what he did. So for the Panthers, who looked like a completely different team with Andy Dalton at the helm, he rushed 21 times for 114 yards. That's 5.4 a carry. Also saw 5 targets, caught all 5 of them for 55 yards and a receiving touchdown. Now, if we look at the Carolina backfield in week 3, we'll see that Miles Sanders put up 11 PPR. That was on 7 rushes for 17 yards, but he did get a touchdown. Also went 2 of 2 on targets, adding 13 receiving yards. So until Jonathan Brooks is able to make his way in for Carolina, I think that you might be able to get these guys into your lineup. Now, that's not to say that you're going to be having both of those guys getting into the double digits each week, but these are players that might be conceivable options. Now, of course, it was just 1 week. It was against a Raiders defense that has been okay, so I really was not expecting that. Actually, I had gone out and spent a decent amount of fab dollars on the Raiders defense in many leagues, so it was a tough one for me to have to swallow when we saw Andy Dalton come out and he and the Panthers just really lay it to the Raiders. Zach Charbonnet has been fantastic in filling in for Ken Walker. Aaron Jones, of course, another notable performance for the Vikings. Emmanuel Wilson this week gets to 16.5. If we take a look at Green Bay's backfield, now I played a couple of teams that had Josh Jacobs, and I'm sure those owners were a little bit frustrated that you have him finishing that contest with just 5.8 PPR. There was a fairly even split of rushing attempts too. You have Wilson at 12, Jacobs at 14. In terms of targets, 2 targets for Wilson. Jacobs saw just 1. And a big difference in the scoring, though, was the fact that Emmanuel Wilson found the end zone through the air. In terms of rushing, though, Wilson was at 4.2 yards an attempt, and you had Josh Jacobs at just 3.1. Now, across the season, Josh Jacobs was only outscoring Emmanuel Wilson by 7 PPR. And if we dig into that, though, you will see that one of the things driving this is just a lot more of efficiency for Wilson, given that Jacobs has 62 rushing attempts to Wilson's 21. Wilson is actually out targeting Jacobs by 1 target. Now, I'm not sure that I'm ready to rule Wilson as the type of guy that you plug into a lineup if you need help, but his efficiency has been pretty strong, and I think it's something worth monitoring there in the Green Bay backfield. We take a zoom out back now just to running backs at large and kind of go down the list a little bit. Bucky Irving with another week, I believe, where he outplays Rachaad White. He actually put up 11.4 points in this contest. And let's just take a quick look here now at the Tampa Bay backfield. So you have 3 games for White, 3 games for Irving. Sean Tucker in his 1 game saw 1 rushing attempt, so we can leave him out of the analysis here. At this point, let's see what we take away from this. Because we have Rachaad White with 31 rushing attempts, Bucky Irving with 25. Rush yards, 66 for White, 154 for Bucky Irving. That means that there's a delta for them of 4.1 yards per attempt, with Rachaad White at just 2.1, Bucky Irving at 6.2. Now, White is out-targeting Irving with 13 targets to 6, 12 receptions to 5, 98 yards versus 28. But at this point, you still see a distance on for the two of 5 PPR. So you definitely like to see White being a little bit more efficient as a rusher. I do think that we could be looking at a scenario by the end of the year where you're playing Irving over White. That certainly seems like a possibility. And if we go week by week, Rachaad White 16.6 to 9.6 in week 1. In week 2, it was 3.3 for White to 2.2 for Irving. And then this weekend, so I take back what I said. This was the first week that Irving did outscore White, 11.4 for Irving to 8.5 for White. Does look like this is a backfield that is definitely not controlled by either player. We're kind of seeing them score kind of in rhythm with how each other is. So this will be an interesting one to track going forward. I am going to feel okay, though, about putting Bucky Irving into lineups in spots that I need. So we're going to flip over now to wide receiver and tight end. In the Monday review tool, I'm going to isolate things here by clicking into this little drop-down box to wide receiver. And we'll pull all players in. Oh, you know what? I lied. First, though, let's just go back to running back quickly and look across the week, or look across the season thus far. So Saquon Barkley at 84.4, followed by Alvin Kamara at 81.7. Then we have a big drop-off behind the two of them. I have to admit, I was not sure, and I was leaning towards the fact that we probably wouldn't see Alvin Kamara be able to keep up the pace from what we saw him do earlier in his career. But at this point, you have to rule that Kamara is just an absolute stud, and that it looks like this should continue as we move forward. In a Saints offense that's playing better than it did last year, didn't look quite as good in week 3, but is allowing him to go for more than 20 points a game. At this point, the distance between Kamara and Devon Achane is it's 20.4 points. We have Breece Hall behind Williams at 61. Then you got Derrick Henry. Zach Charbonnet in just 2 games as the starter comes in, followed by Aaron Jones, who's performing well in Minnesota. David Montgomery ahead of Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs. You got J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Mason, Bijan Robinson. Devin Singletary's in the top 20. You have James Cook in just 2 games in the top 20. Hubbard, who we talked about earlier, Tony Pollard, and Ramondre Stevenson. All right, now we'll make our way over to wide receiver. Looking at week 3, and I can go ahead and I can hit player of the week drop. Got to make sure it's coming through the headphones here. Oh, my Lord. So I wrote about Juwan Jennings in the Passing Game Matchup Radar article this week. And it looked like he had pretty good prospects against the Rams. Then Deebo Samuel is ruled out of this contest. And it's looking like there should be some runway there for him. Added him on a couple of teams. What I did not see coming, I don't think anybody did, was him going for 46.5 PPR 12 targets, 11 receptions, 3 receiving touchdowns, 149 air yards, 26 yards after the catch, 7 first downs, had an ADOT of 12.4. Just really hard to underscore how fantastic of a performance that was for Juwan Jennings. Anybody that managed to get him into your lineup this weekend, you had a huge congratulations from me. This one was really exciting. So there's a couple of things that I think are worth noting here. Obviously, Debo was unavailable in that game, but if you look at the wide receivers for Brock Purdy and then San Francisco 49ers, and we just look across the first 3 weeks, we'll drop Debo Samuel into, I'm in the Monday review tool here, and I'm pulling together a quick little chart. So we're dropping Brandon Ayuk and then Juwan Jennings. And here's the thing. Jennings had 5 targets in week 1, which was tied with Ayuk. In week 2, he saw 1 less target than Ayuk. Debo had the lion's share of targets. Then in week 3, Jennings is at 12 targets. You had just 10 for Ayuk. And what I think is notable here is that even if he is the third option in that offense, and things might change a little bit when Christian McCaffrey gets back into the fold, but Jennings is playing in an offense that can support him as a weekly flex type of option, clearly with tremendous upside. And if we continue to see any games where Samuel or Ayuk has to miss time, I think that Jennings is in line to be a very usable player. So we have seen cases where there's teams that can support 3 wide receivers, and I really am not going to be shocked here if it is San Francisco, or if San Francisco is one of those teams this year. And the added piece that we'll put here is for PPR purposes, Jennings went over 10 points in week 1, was only around 5 in week 2, but then of course he had this smash game here. But certainly seems like a player that we should take notice of. Anyways, congrats to him on being our player of the week. Rashee Rice, 29.1 PPR for the Chiefs, really controlling things with 38.9% target share. And then in terms of air yard share, was at 29.1. Malik Neighbors, oh my gosh, a 28.2 point performance. We've already kind of made the distinction on this show here, but Malik Neighbors, very, very special player. I apologize to those of you that read my article this week and may have put Amari Cooper on the bench as a result of what I wrote. I had him on a lot of benches this week. He puts up 27.6 points and had a target share of 34.3 on 12 targets. Now, up into this game, Jerry Jeudy had looked like he'd be one of those players that could eke out like a 10-point performance, maybe 10 to 12 each week. He still finishes with 8.7 PPR. And the way that the target share is broken down across the season now for Cleveland is as follows. You have Amari Cooper leading the charge with 29 targets, Jerry Jeudy at 21, and Elijah Moore at 15.3. So Jeudy with a 19% target share, Amari Cooper at a 26.1, and Amari Cooper now is at 35.3 PPR, Jerry Jeudy at 32.5. Of course, though, a piece of the puzzle that's missing here is David Njoku has been unavailable for Cleveland. So I think it's good to see Amari Cooper have a game like this, letting us know that, all right, the wheels haven't completely fallen off for him there in Cleveland. Jerry Jeudy could be a fairly consistent player. However, I think when Njoku gets back, we're going to need to scale back the expectations for him somewhat. It's a little hard to say that you can expect games like this from Amari Cooper moving forward, but I think we're going to be back into that realm where he's in the wide receiver 2 conversation. Okay. A couple of other interesting performances at wide receiver from this week that I want to call out. You have Jaden Reed. Oh, no, I was going to say, I don't think you had Jaden Reed with a huge game. So Deontay Johnson with Andy Dalton puts up 26.2. I was kind of thinking in the recesses of my brain here that Andy Dalton for Deontay Johnson could be a much better thing than Bryce Young. Sure enough, we see 14 targets for Johnson. He converts 8 of them, 122 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Rome Odunze for Caleb Williams gets his first touchdown of the year, I believe. Let me just confirm that. And Chicago's offense was one that was very wild this game. Let's see. Yep, first receiving touchdown for Odunze. But yeah, so you have Cole Kmet putting up like 36 plus fantasy points for Chicago. Meanwhile, in this one, his wide receivers are all outscored by him. You have DJ Moore at 15.2, DeAndre Carter at 5.2. Of course, Keenan Allen was unavailable. And if we drop Kmet in here, what we'll see is a target share that broke down such as this. Cole Kmet, 11 targets, Odunze, 11, DJ Moore, 10, with a receiving touchdown for Kmet and Odunze. That is a lot of targets to go to 3 players. 30-plus targets going between Kmet, Odunze, and Moore. I would expect, though, that when Keenan Allen comes back, we're going to see that this was more of a blip for Kmet and will not be the norm. All right. Calvin Austin, kind of a random game here for Pittsburgh, gets to 19.5. Marvin Harrison gets to 17. DJ Moore, as we said, was at 15. Devonta Smith, unfortunately, exits the Eagles game early, and we'll have to be paying close attention to his situation after a scary hit that he took in the Eagles contest with the Saints. Michael Wilson got to 14.4 for the Cardinals. Alan Lazard, another decent game, ekes out 13.8 points, seeing some targets from Aaron Rodgers. At tight end, you have Dallas Goedert going for 27 PPR. Now, of course, A.J. Brown was not there and unavailable. But across the year now, Dallas Goedert has been fairly involved for the Eagles. Modest performances, getting to around 8 points the first couple of games. However, though, in those games, he did get to 5 targets and 4 targets. So largely the highest volume of the season for him here. He's followed by Kmet, who we mentioned too. I guess in non-tight end premium got to 25.7. Followed by Jake Ferguson, Tyler Conklin, Noah Fant, Kadon, and Nick Vannett, Josh Weil, Kyle Pitts, Brock Wright, Pat Freiermuth, Johnny Munt, then Brock Bowers, then Travis Kelce. Why am I reading all of these names? Just because it has been a very weird year with tight end scoring compared to what people were thinking. We're having one of these odd scenarios where you had a lot of these young tight ends stringing together some very compelling seasons in their rookie year, getting off to slow starts. We have Dalton Kincaid playing tonight. We'll have to see what he ends up doing for Buffalo. But, I'm sure we have a lot of disappointed managers out there, especially when we look at weeks 1 through 3, and we see that Dallas Goedert, Brock Bowers, Cole Kmet, Isaiah Likely, George Kittle are still ahead of Trey McBride. We have to go very far down to find Sam Laporta, who's at like tight end 15. Kyle Pitts behind Hunter Henry around tight end 8. We'll have to see what happens, like I said, when Kincaid plays. And of course, Travis Kelce, a disappointment as well, more of a veteran. But yeah, he's tight end 20 at this point, behind some players on our list that have only played 2 games. So I need to pick out now our snoozer of the week. And my snoozer of the week is going to go, I think I hadn't actually decided before we got on air here. Let me pull up wide receiver. There was a couple of guys that I thought it could be. I know. I should have picked this out before we started recording. How about Juju Smith-Schuster getting a touchdown and being used in some scoring situations by Kansas City. All right. I promise going forward, I'll have the snoozer picked out. I thought I had somebody in my mind. I almost should just give it to Trey Benson for letting me down so much so far. I think that it might be. Do I really want to do it? I'm going to tell you who it is. It's for me this week. We're going to go personal. And my snoozer of the week is going to be Derek Carr. Derek Carr and the Saints had been absolutely phenomenal in recent games. I know some of us were looking for streamers, maybe teams where Jordan Love was a player that you had drafted. And as a result, you're expecting to get some decent things from Derek Carr. Across the first 2 weeks of the season, he was the QB2, had gone over 20 points in back-to-back weeks, or somewhere around there. And then he comes out this week. The Saints are struggling to put points on the board, and Derek Carr produces just 8 points on a line that includes 14 of 25 for just 142 yards, 1 passing touchdown, and on top of that, he throws an interception and rushes for just 2 yards. So there you have it. My snoozer of the week for week 1 is Derek Carr. Very quickly, though, let's take a look here at wide receiver results through the first 3 games. And Malik Neighbors, rookie wide receiver for the New York Giants, sits atop the rankings, followed by Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, Juwan Jennings, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Jaden Reed, Stephon Diggs, and another rookie in Marvin Harrison. So appreciate you stopping by, hanging out, listening to the show. I am planning on doing 2 shows later in the week. Still not sure if this week, if it's going to be a Thursday and Friday, or I guess they would maybe come out on Saturday morning and Friday morning. But maybe what we'll try to do, as I'm thinking this through, is one that will publish Wednesday morning, one that will publish Friday morning. I think that's going to be the plan. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. Shoot us a question at rvffshow@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Dave Caban FF. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and check out the RotoViz YouTube channel. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next episode.